Hello there, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LevDev, and before we get on to day 3 of spoilers, I do feel like I need to owe an apology. What happened is, I originally tried to upload the second part of the second day for the spoilers reveal, but I realized that I did an additional dead air kind of recording on accident. That's what happens when you press your recording button on a common key that you use for typing and such. So it was literally 23 minutes of dead air, and I accidentally uploaded that video for the second day. Lucky enough, I refixed it now, so the one that is uploaded for day 2 is the edited version, which actually showed my opinion on the day 2 cards. So you can go back and actually watch that video if you want to. But for those who originally tried to watch the video and did not see what they wanted to see and just saw pretty much nothing from what I saw when I checked the Dead Air video, I apologize in advance. I'm still beginning in this video production stuff, and it turns out I need to name my files a lot more frequent than what they are named based on recording software. Nevertheless, quick oopsies. And also, I'm going to try to make it where this video is a lot more faster, because I realized the previous one is 40 minutes. That way, we can upload these faster. Like I said, quick take on the cards. And we got a couple good ones. One is the House Guild Mage, blue and a black, so Dimir. A creature, human wizard. It's a bear, which has 2 activated abilities. 1 in a blue, target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. That's interesting. And 2 in a black, and tap it for Servier 2. So, overall, if you're in the Dimir colors, in Limited, this is just a fine bear. The activated abilities are a plus, especially if those activated abilities are related to the archetype you're playing. I mean, target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap, so it's a freeze, which could be very effective if you need to freeze a very problematic creature on the opponent's side, as long as it doesn't have hexproof or anything like that. And also the Servier 2 can help you scry, like if you are in a stall state late game, these mana add abilities can be activated at the end of the opponent's turn. Overall, fine for Limited. I would be surprised to see standard play. It's kind of, these abilities, while nice, we are still in a removal-centric meta, and I think this is one of those cards that can be easily targeted and such. Still, nice flavor. I can see someone splashing it in their Brawl or even their Commander decks, but overall, pretty much a very functional Limited bear. Next card is the Gagari Fine Broker. 2 green, 2 black. For an Elf Shaman, it's a free 4, and when it enters the battlefield, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is kind of a weird variation on Eternal Witness. Like, it's definitely Gagari-centric, since you are spending a lot of mana to do this. But, it's a good card? Yeah, it's a good card. It's pretty much one of these cards are very good because the target permanent can return either one of your early game creatures that are value-based to your hand, or even maybe a control enchantment, or maybe even, like, there's a variety of permanents that you can return back to your hand. Like, maybe even a land if you need a land. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I've seen weirder stuff before. Overall, and also the stats are decent for a 4-drop, so free 4, return something that might be powerful to have as additional fuel for late game. Great for Limited. I even might see standard play, especially if we have cards that we do want to return back from the graveyard and such, because I think people are going to try these color pies like Gagari or even Sultai or Jun and such, and they are going to feed their graveyard a lot. So I do think this is a great kind of insurance policy to bring back something that actually goes into the graveyard that you want to get back for later turn and such. So overall, really good card. It'll be fun to see this play in Standard, but mostly it's a great Limited card, and probably it's going to see play in Commander. Definitely Brawl. Next is the other Guild Mage for the Gagari. It's the Swarm Guild Mage. Gagari colors, green and a black. It's a 2-2, as we expected before. Elf Shaman. It has 2 activated abilities that you have to tap it. 4 black and tap, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain menace until end of turn. They can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, or you can do 1 in a green and tap it to gain 2 life. Honestly, it's kind of the same thing as I said with the Dimir Guild Mage. It's fine. It's one of those that I do think that it's nice to have this ability, the 4 and the black, because I think that will finish people on some games, especially if you can keep a good board presence. I mean, giving the creatures a buff and then giving them all menace, That can be a finisher. That's kind of a trumpet blast, kind of like effect that you can go for a finisher. Gain 2 life is cool, but I don't know how necessary it's going to be. Like, unless we get cards in Gagari which benefit from life gain synergies, which we haven't really seen that much yet, I don't see it. Like, I don't see like an Ajani's Pride May-like card in this set that get benefits of the gain life. I mean, I guess if it's a dead turn, you're not going to do anything at the end of the opponent's turn, and you're in a bored state, you can just do this and just keep up and generate life to help you maintain life status in a game. But, it's a thought. It's an interesting one. Overall, great for Limited. Probably going to be good in Commander and Brawl. I would be surprised if this sees standard play, but like I said, been surprised before. Next is another highlight card that's coming from the set, the one that people have been waiting for, the Gagari Queen herself, Vraska. 4 mana, so 2 Gagari colors, black and a green, for legendary Planeswalker Vraska. She has 4 loyalty, and she has these activated abilities. +2, you may sacrifice another permanent. If you do, you gain 1 life and draw a card. -3, destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost for your list, or... -9, you get an emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. This card is peculiar. On one hand, those minus abilities are really nice. The -3 being an Abrupt Decay, that's good. The -9 being essentially a game finisher, especially if you have evasive creatures at all, that's really good. The plus, though. The plus, though, is where I am totally 100% on the fence about. Now, don't get me wrong. The fact that you choose what permanent you can sacrifice and it be sacrifice another permanent, you could build your deck around where sacrificing permanents are beneficial to you, and just doing that to essentially draw a card is good. But this is going to be weird. I mean, it's a good resource generation engine. I'll say that. It's nice to see this type of spell kind of being able to be recast thanks to it being a planeswalker. And I do think it might see standard play, but we do need a good shell to protect her if we want to play this card. You need a good mid-range deck for her to work. Now, we have the removal, and we do have the spells, like for early game and even some late game, but do we really have the mid-range spells or even creatures we would need to protect Vraska? Because if we do, then this card is actually really, really good for standard. In Limited, let's be frank, you're going to play her. Limited Planeswalkers are always good to play if you are in the right colors, because at worst, they're just a wall to protect you from damage since people are going to try to attack it because, oh no, it's a Planeswalker, I gotta destroy that ASAP. At best, if you can make a deck that synergizes with her very well, then, well, you're in for the races, as the saying goes. Overall, I think it's a good card, but I do not think that it's absolutely 100% amazing. It's functional, it gets the job done, and if you put her in a right shell, she can do some work, I'll say that. But still, it's really hard to build her up with that +2. I mean, we might see cards in the set that does have benefit synergies when it dies or when you sack something, so we'll wait and see. Next up is a common, a 2-drop, 1 in a blue, Pass Wall of Depth. It's a human wizard, 1/3, that has 1 simple activated ability. 2 in a blue, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Yeah, this card's good. It's a card that, to put it in other words, this card has the potential to, it's going to see a lot of play in Limited. It's a decent wall, and if you need a finisher, this can help you make a creature be able to finish the opponent off by making their highest power creature be able to attack in without being blocked. It's just a functional of a really good 2-drop. Is it perfect? No, it's still prone to removal, and it is one of those where I don't think it will see much standard play, but it's just a really good draft card, especially if you are in one where you need to get lethal damage in with a high power creature and such. Never underestimate the power of a Rogue's Passage-like card. I'll put it like that. Next up is the Midnight Reaper. 2 and a black, Zombie Knight. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Midnight Reaper deals 1 damage to you, and you draw a card. So this is kind of the Diabolic Tutor, or not Diabolic, oh, what's the name? We always name him Bob, but I always forget the name of the card. But essentially, this is our card draw engine for black. And essentially, it is one of those cards that do kind of benefit from the Vraska theme, as we mentioned before. Do we want to benefit if our creature's dying? Oh, hey, when a creature dies, it deals 1 damage to us, which, yeah, but we didn't draw a card. So then, like, say with Vraska, and then one of your creatures die with the Vraska's Plus ability, the creature dies, then you gain, let me check again, I believe it's, yeah, you gain 1 life, but then you lose the 1 life, so you still stay at the same life, but you draw 2 cards, which is not bad. And also, it's beneficial in other strategies, like maybe aristocratic decks might like the card and such. Now, you don't want to get too greedy, because while the 1 life loss might not be too detrimental, it is one you have to be very, very, very cautious about. In Standard, this will be interesting to see if this goes into the zombie or even knight-style decks because of that creature type. But I do think opponents, especially if they are very aggro-based, might like this card in Standard, since it's kind of one of those, they can put it on the back and then just attack in with the lower power creatures, and if those creatures die, oh hey, the opponent has to realize they were warning them with card draw. So, that's something to consider. In Limited, it's a pretty good card. It is prone to removal, but I do think this is a functional card if you're in the right colors. Do not ever underestimate a card that helps you draw cards, because card draw is a very, very powerful mechanic. Yep, I can tell it's Wednesday from recording this, especially after getting done with work today. Anyway, next up is the Phoenix Alcol Brilliante, as they say in the foreign language. It's a 4-cost Phoenix Mythic that's a 3/2. It has flying and haste, and it has the ability that if it's in the graveyard, if you cast 3 or more instant or sorcery spells during your turn, then you can return this from the graveyard to the battlefield. I think this card's good, but it's just kind of weird. This is definitely wants to be kind of like in an Is It style deck where you're going to be casting a lot of spells. But the thing is, you kind of want to have a lot of cheap spells. And the problem I've been seeing, at least at the moment, most of the jumpstart spells that we've been seeing are very, very high cost, like 3 mana, 2 mana, 4 mana, and such. We haven't really seen a 1-cost jumpstart spell yet, at the very least. So, I mean, if there is a red deck, aggro deck might just still like this card because it does allow them to be able to just be like, shock, shock, and then shock, and then just bring a creature back, but the question is that realistic? I don't know. I'm not going to underestimate this card because a card that has a way to bring itself back onto the battlefield and be able to still go on the aggressive is nothing to sneeze at. However, I don't know if we're going to have decks that can cast constantly free instant or sorcery spells in a turn in this meta. We still have to see the whole set to see if it's possible, but it's still a thought. Overall, I do think this is a good limited card, though, because it's good just because it's a 4-mana free 2 flyer. I think the second part, that it returns to the battlefield once you cast free instant or sorcery spells, is going to be very not going to happen that much. And the main reason why is because in general, the general drafting deck is usually consists about 5 to 8 instant or sorcery spells, if they're not even non-instant sorcery spells, but like, say, artifacts or enchantments and such. So I think you're not going to return this to the battlefield in draft. In constructed, maybe. We just have to really see the archetype where this fits in pretty well, if a spell-centric deck can be a thing. Next up is the La Mala Ineludible. In other words, I think it's like the Inevitable Flame or something like that. 6 mana, which is a lot, but this spell can't be countered. It's an instant, and it deals 6 damage to any target. Is this card good? Yeah, it's not bad, actually. It's definitely a good limited card. It's good limited removal, which You can eliminate a planeswalker, you can eliminate a creature, and even you can just deal 6 damage to the face if you want to go for a finisher. And the fact that it can't be countered does help against counter magic, so in limited, this is removal. This is probably a path 1, pick 1. Sure, the 6 mana is a lot, but unconditional removal is nothing to sneeze at. Also, I think this might see some fringe play in Standard as a 1/2 of in some burn decks, because the factor that most burn decks like to at least have 1 or 2 spells that can't be countered to help with being able to deal burn damage to the opponent and finish. And this one, yes, the cost is steep, but I do think it's possible. Probably also will see play in Commander and Brawl, but we'll see about that. Anyway, next up is the best jump start spell that we have, which is Maximiser l'altitude. 1 blue, finally a jumpstart spell that is creature gets a +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. And if I recall correctly, it's a sorcery speed. Let me check one moment by clicking in. Yep, it's sorcery. So, yeah. The best jumpstart spell that we have, other than a draw spell, is a 1-cost combat trick. I mean, this both makes me happy and kind of depressed at the same time. So overall, let's go for this. Is it good unlimited? Yeah, it's good as a 23rd card. If you need to find a way to give your creature evasiveness, the fact that you can activate this twice and maybe do it on a really good creature to help get in for lethal damage and such, it's nothing to sneeze at. In Constructed, I think if there is a way to make a spells deck work, they kind of have to rely on cheap spells. And this is a cheap spell, and the fact that you can repeat it with Jumpstart is something to keep in mind. So, might see Standard play, maybe even the favorable Wind style decks, maybe. It's a thought. I mean, I'm kind of disappointed because the cheapest Jumpstart spell we have is a combat trick, but you take what you get. Anyway, next in another foreign language spoiler is Gouverneur le Tempestad. 4 and a red for an instant spell, deal 5 damage to target creature. It's a common. Oof. Okay, guys, let's just be frank. Yes, this is probably not going to see constructed play. Let's just get that out of the way. It's not a lightning strike. It's not a shock. We know. Are you still going to play this in limited? Yes, it's unconditional removal. I mean, yes, you probably want to take the bomb over this, don't get me wrong, but still, unconditional removal is unconditional removal. Even though spending 5 mana for it is a little... Yeah. This card, I would be surprised if it sees constructed play. But, limited, you play it if you have to, because it is removal, and removal is always good in draft formats. Next up, a very interesting card, the Molderhork. 7 in Gagari, green and a black, for a 6/6 zombie fungus, and it has Undergrowth. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. When Molderhork enters the battlefield, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Wow, that is pretty good. That's in limited. If you have the graveyard deck that this benefits in, this is a really, really good card. I mean, it's a 6/6 that can be as cheap as 2 if you have the right deck. But let's be frank, realistically, it's going to be like around 4 or 5. And when it enters the battlefield, it returns a land card that you probably accidentally milled from the graveyard to the battlefield. That's really good. I mean, I guess the con is it's still a 6/6. It doesn't have any evasion and such. But the factor that in the right decks you can get this out very, very early is nothing to sneeze at. So in limited, absolute playable. Constructed? I'm going to say maybe. This is an absolutely maybe in Constructed, because getting cards that allow you to get your land from the graveyard to the battlefield is nothing to sneeze at. We like Crucible Worlds, we like Ravnica Excavators, and this card just having the into the battlefield effect doing that, that's really, 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 really good. So overall, I would say great card for limited, and it's probably going to see some constructed play. I'm not sure in what type of deck just yet, but it's a good card. Next up, the Guild Mage's Forum. It's a land, add 1 mana, or 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. If that mana is spent on a multicolored creature spell, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. It's fine. If you need a filter land, I don't think this is like a pack one pick one per se. But if you are going to be in a multicolored deck, which you're probably going to be in a multicolored deck in this set, especially if you're playing constructed or definitely if you're playing limited, this land is not bad. I mean, it will probably not feel great to pull this as a rare, don't get me wrong. But still, that ability for it to enter with a 1/1 counter if it's a multicolored creature spell, I mean, for example, making this into, say, a 7/7 or other golden creatures we've seen, some that even have flying and such, and getting an additional 1/1 counter on it, that could be pretty good. I mean, it's not amazing, but you'll definitely see some limited play. Constructed, really depends on if we are in a slow enough meta that it can play this land, and if we have any cards that benefit from having counters on them, which we do see some cards that benefit from it, so it's a maybe. We'll see, though. Overall, fine card. It'll be interesting to see its versatility in Constructed, but mostly it's a limited card, and probably going to see some Commander play in decks that are counter-specific, like Gave or such, for example. Next up is the Goblin Banneret. It's a 1 red, 1/1 Goblin Soldier with Mentor. Huh? But it has an activated ability of 1 and a red. It gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Overall, it's a fine card. It is a card. We are now getting a lot more goblins in this set than we have in the Dominaria set. So people are really tempted to think that goblins might actually be a thing. And hey, we now have another 1-drop goblin that's not bad. Like, let's be frank, in Limited, you're probably just going to put this in with a Mentor deck and such, and then have the Mentor triggers happen on him, so you get counters on Goblin Banneret, which then now, since it has Mentor, which then can help power up any other lower power creatures that you have in your deck that you draw and then play, it's a fine card. I think it's going to be definitely fine for Limited. In Constructed, it'll be very interesting to see if a Goblin-style deck or a Mentor-style deck relies on this card and actually is able to see play and such. It's tempting, but overall, probably just a fine Limited card. Its potential in Constructed is nothing to sneeze at, but, well, it's a 1/1, so don't bet the house on it, is what I'm saying. Next up is actually a cycle, which is the Lockets. Now, always in a Guild set or any Ravnica set, they always like to provide us kind of like Mana Rock type of cards. They pretty much do this in any multicolor set they do, like in Ravnica, in Khans of Tarkir and such. If it's a multicolor set, we're probably going to get a Mana Rock of some sort. And a cycle to help us produce colors to help us with our kind of like guilds that we are in. And this set, they provide Lockets, which are free mana rocks, which tap for either one of the color from the color pairs of a guild, or you can hybrid mana, spend 4 mana of hybrid of that guild's color, so 4 red, 4 white, 2 red, 2 white, however you want to tap it, to sacrifice the rocket to draw 2 cards. And they both have this for Boros, Dimir, Gagari, and of course, Selesnya and Izzet. So, are these cards good? In Limited, they are fine. If you need a Mana Rock in your deck, they are fine, especially if you're in those specific guild colors. And the fact that you can use them for late game for card draw once you have your mana, they're fine cards. In Constructed, honestly, I think the only time they're going to see play in Constructed is in Brawl, per se. I would be surprised if DC play in, like, Standard or even, like, any other Eternal formats, but I've been surprised before. But mostly, these feel like cards to be put into, like, a Brawl deck if you especially have, like, a Commander that's in a specific guild color and you need a Mana Rock to produce these colors. And then late game, you can draw the cards and such. These might see play in Commander, but there are better stuff. Like, we haven't really seen any Mana Rocks that are good as the Signets in a while, so honestly, if you're playing Commander, you're probably playing the Signets. So, yeah. Next up, and let me make sure if it's not the last one, because, oh yeah, we do have 2 to cover right after this one, so next one is, okay, this one I'm going to have to zoom in because I can't remember the name exactly, but it is Vivid Renewal. 4 and a green sorcery. Return up to 3 target multicolored cards from your graveyard to your hand, and then exile Vivid Renewal. So, overall, it's a fine card. It is definitely very interesting. I think many people were kind of disappointed by this card, but here's the thing. Do not ever underestimate a card that helps you to return cards to your hand. Yes, we had very specific ones like return target creature card, return a target spell, but one that allows you the ability to return any card from your graveyard to your hand is nothing to sneeze at. You can use this to return Planeswalker cards. You can use this to return, pretty much like we said before, multicolor creature spells, or maybe even multicolor instant sorcery spells and such. I do think if a Sultai control deck is a thing, they might put this in as a 1 or 2 of, because, hey, you can bring Black Assassin's Trophy with this to hold up Assassin's Trophy and such, so, yeah. These cards are always cards that always get underrated, but should never, ever get underrated. Yeah, it might be too high cost for what you're getting, but I do think control decks will not mind paying the additional mana cost. So in Constructed, if a control deck in green is a thing, and any other color, they'll be playing this card. In Limited, really, it depends on your deck. If you are a very value-oriented deck that likes multicolored creatures, or maybe you have a multicolored planeswalker and such, and this spell can help you benefit to get all of them back, it's something to consider. Are there better cards to play? Yes, but it's something to consider. Okay, the last 2 cards are actually pretty good. This one is an interesting one. It's another split card, which is Expansion to Explosion. Expansion, hybrid mana, 2 red or 2 blue, red or blue, etc. Instant spell, copy target instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less. You may choose new targets for the copy. So pretty much a fork. An explosion, X blue blue, red red. For explosion deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards. Honestly, this is probably a card that for constructed purposes, I think it's mostly going to see Commander play. It has potential in Standard, don't get me wrong. Like, this is cards I do want to see to make the red-blue spell deck be a thing. But it's kind of like more a top-end card, especially with that explosion side of it. The expansion's definitely nice, because maybe on turn 3, you can, if you're going spell-centric, like, say, cast an op, and then just... I know this sounds like the worst example of doing this, but it's something to consider. Like, you can cast, say, an op, and then use expansion to cast op again. That's something to consider, to at least maybe if you're having a deck that needs to determine by how many spells you cast in a turn and such. Like, say, I don't know, like that Phoenix and such. So there are ways that expansion can be potentially powerful. Plus, it also is just good because you can copy also opponent spells and actually gain benefit from the opponent spells as well. The versatility in expansion for being that low cost for a fork is nothing to sneeze at, and it is a really powerful side. Explosion is good, but you really have to be a late game deck to benefit a lot from Explosion. To put it in other words, if you're not like dealing free damage and drawing free cards, then this card side kind of feels bad. And spending 7 mana to do that does feel a little lay. But I do think this side is just good because, like, let's say, for example, if you're playing a Timur red, green, blue deck, and oh, hey, you can return a target instant sorcery spell, return this back to your hand, or maybe if you draw this late game, maybe you have enough mana that Explosion can be slightly beneficial and synergistic. So, but it can also be copied by expansion, and then you get dealt that many damage and such. So, I think it's a really good card. I do think it has potential for standard and maybe even limited play. Though keep in mind in limited, like we said before, the instant sorcery clause. In general, people are going to have about 4 to 5 to maybe 8 instant or sorcery spells in their deck, so don't presume that you're going to target their best things with it. You might not even see them draw their best thing with it, so keep that in mind. But it's still a good card. I think this is a really, really good card. Even though that explosion side does feel... Oy. Next up, and the last card on the list, for today at least, and it's actually cool because it's a reprint. It's 1 in a blue, And I know this card, Disdainful Stroke. Instant spell, counter target spell that costs 4 or greater. Honestly, many control players, when they saw this card reveal, pretty much said, hallelujah, because this card is good in control. Control players love this card because it's good against the mirror matchup. Because mostly if you're playing a control deck, mostly your fiend is control, control, control until you play a late game spell. And mostly we didn't have a way to, unless we have negate, to counter if we play against mirror matchups to counter against really late game big spells. Now, Disdainful Stroke pretty much answers that perfectly. Do you need a counter Carnage Tyrant? Oh, hey, you can... Oh, no, wait. Okay, bad example. You need a counter Teferi? Oh, hey, you can counter Teferi. There are many spells that are late game that are great to just be able to negate. And it might be beneficial in limited. It depends on how many late game spells we see in the set. But this card is really, really good and constructed. Like, this is an absolute... It's going to see play in control decks in Standard. No sweat about that. In Limited, really depends on how many late game, like 4 cost or more spells that we get in this set. I mean, counting Ravnica is going to feel nice and such, but it's very dependent. It's mostly going to be a sideboard in Limited, if I'm being honest. But overall, great reprint. I think many control players are very happy that this got reprinted. Overall, those are the cards that have been revealed as of this recording. I will try to now remember to upload this specific footage and not like dead air footage like I did with the day 2 video. Still, I apologize for that. But anyways, I hope you have a lovely day. This is LevDev, signing out.